Dennis, say and spell your name for me.
I forgot your name.
My name, oh, Gerb.
Curb?
Gerb.
Gerb.
G-I-R-B-E.
All right.
Yep.
I am Dennis Malaret.
Can you spell that?
D-E-N-N-I-S-M-A-L-A-R-E-T. The T is mute.
Okay,
All right.
good, we're ready, Jeff.
Okay. So, Dennis, maybe we could just start off by talking about how long you've been teaching at Grand Valley.
For about 16 years now.
Okay. And you teach in the sociology department?
Sociology department.
Okay. And what's been your experience as a member of kind of the LGBT community, both teaching at Grand Valley in terms of how maybe students react to you, but also how staff and faculty respond to that? And what differences, what changes have you seen maybe over the last 16 years, good or bad, at Grand Valley?
It is a very interesting question because you have to be vigilant, but then I'm the kind who tend to ignore things, and I believe that empowerment is to be able to deal with situations without letting them affect you. So therefore, I tend to always give the benefit of the doubt. Now, I noticed that sometimes there is something that I call gentle exclusion. You are like somewhat part of the group, part of the process, but you are not, and that is reflected in the way you raise questions or arguments at meetings, social activities. Sometimes it feels that with good intentions, good people tend to sort of segregate you when they choose to invite you to socialize in town or in their houses with members of the same kind. And I feel it, but I wonder, are they doing it intentionally or is it a human thing? So they say, oh, well, you know what, if Dennis and Jeff think alike and are the same, then why don't we invite them the same day at the same time? And sometimes it doesn't feel well. In terms of the classroom, I had never disclosed who I am, and most people in this town don't even know.
Okay.
Because I had chosen, or I live a different path. I am not the one who goes to the gay scenery or wear a sign who say, I am this. I feel as man as you are, as strong as you are. It happened to be that I do have a different sexual orientation, no different, an alternative, and I have tried it all to see to convince myself that I was in the right track. And then, but that I felt that I was deceiving other people if I wasn't truly to myself. In the classroom, there is a thin line. You always have the students, usually the traditional, I call it students that have not had the chance to build a social, civic proficiency. Sometimes they try to challenge you in the most petty way. And that is, I sometimes suspect, oh, this person knows, so I may have to switch personalities, gear, and put my foot down and let them know, hey, listen, look out. But that is happening less and less and less as you develop techniques in how to deal with the students. There's a lot to be said. You know, I feel like a colleague who categorize him or herself as heterosexual, they can put the gay flag hanging on their door, or a sign, I believe in inclusion, and so forth, but I don't feel that I am in the position to do the same thing. Not only because I am part of that community, but also because I am categorized as an ethnic male. So it doesn't matter how you look at it, there is some incentives and privileges that come from the dominant group that they can exhibit, display some things, and the risk probably is minimal or lesser than the one that I could expose myself to. I'm not sure of that. I have not given a try.
Sure. Well, could you say something more about, do you think that, besides, being a gay man, also being Puerto Rican, being
Mhm.
Latino, does that sort of, in terms of how Grand Valley may sort of, as an institution, sort of look at you, does that create sort of an additional kind of barrier or make it even more difficult
Well-
to kind of feel like who you are is accepted on campus?
Well, yes, if you could go back to Audre Lorde, Intersectionality, right? The matrix of dominance and oppression. She called it double strikes or double jeopardy. And I do think I have three: gay male, Latino, a thick accent. Okay, and sometimes you wonder which one of the three weighs more. Is my accent in my mouth or in my brain? So it doesn't make it easier because you have in my case, I am always interested in doing other things, but I find that I'm limited because I do have an accent. Even in speaking Spanish, when there somebody's to be hired or contacted to say something, they're looking for somebody who doesn't have an accent in Spanish. And to me, it means like, oh, maybe a Spanish accent. Sounds good. So that is a difficult one because everything is so covered, so institutionalized. I can tell you this, that sometimes I try to raise questions or issues, and it feels like this. I'm not the right person to suggest it. When the right person suggests it, maybe they can take it and develop it throughout those 16 years. So what you do, try to develop an alternative, okay, to what is it that you intend to do. In meetings, I had noticed that it's not just me because I am a Latino or have an accent. I have noticed that when women and minorities raise questions, people say, oh, interesting, and they don't follow up, elaborate, or let's see what we can do about it. And we tend to look at each other, not only in the sociology meeting, but in other university-wide meetings. We tend to look at each other. Do you catch that? Do you see that? Why is it that they're not giving me the attention that I deserve? And sometimes you're cut off right there. But there is a gentle way to do it. Somebody else says something, and everybody look to that person and end of the conversation in this end. I tell to my students a lot about it, that for 16 years now I noticed that pattern. So what happened with that? We tend to do less, be less engaged, and sometimes we tend to give up because we think it's not worth it. You have read ample on publications and research, what is funded, what is not, who get published, who isn't, and sometimes you get exhausted. In my case, I had always a niche. I'm a gardener. So my frustration is planting more and studying my plants and loving more my dog, right? That she's 16 years old now. But then you find, I think that you get stronger and live with that. It's not that you're tolerating it or that you accept it. It's just that it's all around, it's all over. I do believe since the first day I set foot in the U.S. that this is a society that has never seen truly competition. Competition is limited and controlled. If we have open competition where people can show their talent and flourish within those talents, society will look differently and will be performing differently in many, many areas.
Sure. I'm trying to think in terms of how long since you've been there for 16 years. What's been your involvement or your observations about sort of the effort on campus at Grand Valley to get same-sex partner benefits? There was sort of a bigger battle a while back that was sort of defeated, and now they have it. And so I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Quite frankly, I had not put too much thought to it because for some reason, I have thought differently all along. Not that I want to stand out, but I am one of those who believe that the community need to reinvent alternative. I don't believe that myself should be working within or under, so to speak, the oppressive institutions, like for instance, gay marriage, right? Well, you know what? In itself, the traditional marriage, with some exceptions, is a very unequal and oppressive institution. So why should we try to replicate the same institution? Why don't we reinvent an institution that worked for us? So that itself made me think differently. In terms of same benefits, I do believe that, yes, that is the right track because we pay taxes. And possibly that will, you know, that I spoke about this, this self-destructive or fatalistic perspective in life that affect other ethnic, racial groups. I'm not talking about self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm talking about a wider problem. It's there too in the gay community, and you have different layers. You have the conservative gays and lesbians who work within those institutions, and unfortunately they have more of a say, and they believe that they can speak for all. I have been arguing. I was trying at the beginning to be part of the process, and they had this voting process that you put your name. If you get elected, you're part of the committee for 2 years. Of course, you're not going to be elected. How many Latino gays GVSU has? One. Nobody's going to vote for you because that's the way it goes. And then they have this, like, in a way, dynasty, and they speak for all. But I'm afraid to tell you that I don't agree with much of that. Okay. But I do agree in that we have to have those benefits. We pay for them. So, yeah, there is a lot of conservative people within the community. And I cannot help but to wonder what is it that they're thinking. Right. I read a book, Homocoms. Forgot the author, but that tells you an idea that the conservative gay movement is likely to prevail because they're the ones who are rewarded and promoted by these institutions of correction. Sure. I must say institutions of oppression.
Right. Let's talk about that a little bit more, because I found that interesting recently reading Vicki Eckler's book called People's History of Queer America, sort of kind of following Zinn's approach.
I just got that one.
Yeah. It was very interesting. And one of the threads in the book that I thought was instructive for me in particular was that there's always been sort of this historical tension between folks within the LGBT community who are trying to kind of constantly articulate that their main goal is liberation, or as you say, sort of creating new ways of doing things, new institutions. And then there's a whole other sector that's more interested in assimilation, just sort
assimilation
of fitting in. So I'm just wondering, in your experience as well. I mean, because it seems to be that it's okay at some level for people in the gay community to be gay if they take the assimilationist path. But if you're always sort of talking about liberation in whatever form that is, then all of a sudden you become a kind of a problem.
If you notice in Facebook that I speak out, and I use Facebook as a tool to disseminate information from diet. I believe that diet is the key for everything, the way we think and act, and then responsible civility. Now, I have been called many times an angry man, and I said there is nothing wrong to be an intellectually angry person because you're always reading, you're always on the quest of finding ways to educate people. And I find that within the community you have these two poles that are constantly. I do think that the conservative side is always trying to dictate and speak for the more liberal side that believe in liberation, and I am on that side. Perhaps I may come across a little bit more radical because I don't believe in this Anglo perspective of the coming out process. That is a misguided label and a assumption. What I have discovered throughout the years is that the coming out process tend to force people to choose sides, to differentiate themselves from the rest of the population. I'm different. They start incorporating terms such as tolerance, difference, I'm gay, I'm lesbian, I'm not, I'm bisexual, and I don't think that that is so important. What is important is to have to get to the point that we live side by side with no distinction with the rest of the community or the population. I'm going to tell you this, the coming out process that I find is so intriguing. If I sit back and I think about it, the assumption is that someday you come to terms with your sexuality and tell people I'm gay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then take the risk.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are going to accept you, those who are going to reject you. And then that is like gambling with that. I disagree with all that because what I find in the Latino community and perhaps in the Asian and African American, I cannot speak for them, but by observing, you negotiate space and time. Your parents, your mother will say, always no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't sit back and waiting for that moment for you to tell them, oh, by the way, I'm gay. So you do it through time and space. You participate in family events. You do things with them, socialize with them. There's some things that, like this imaginary wall or line that you don't trespass. It doesn't mean that is better or that is right, and then that coming out process never takes place. If you have a partner, you do things for your family, but your mother will never ask you, oh, by the way, this is your partner? It is assumed, but it is covered.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, the assumption is like everybody come out, and I like to use that in my case. I had never told people, I mean, here and there, you know, but I tell people this thing. Don't you ever expect me to sit back and pretend that I don't have a life. When the time comes, if it is pertinent to the conversation, I am going to be talking about my life too, just like you can talk about your partners or your lovers and so forth. So I have always put that condition to people because you have to, even my family. I was one of those who said, hey, listen, this is who I am. I am not going to discuss it with anyone. I'm not going to negotiate that with anyone. And to the point that they liked it, and then because the generalizations are such, when I hang out with my mother in Puerto Rico, she's like, do you like this person? Should I approach him and introduce it to you? I'm like, mother, it's not like that. Plus, I do have a partner in Grand Rapids. To be gay doesn't mean that you're going to be hitting on everyone or that you're checking people out. Which takes me to another thing. Something that is aggravating is that the degree of, I'm not sure, respect or seriousness, sometimes it feels it's not there. And I'm going to explain. Among my heterosexual friends, they can date somebody for a day, or they're dating someone and they can say, well, good looking, not good looking, or wow, hot, not hot, sexy, not sexy. But I had noted that in a few instances, dear friends of mine asked me, what do you think of this person? I said, very smart and very handsome. That person later on said, oh, Dennis wants to sleep with him. I'm like, that is aggravating because in the first place I was asked to comment. Or a good-looking woman come to my office and like, well, haven't you made your mind yet? Do you want to sleep with her? I'm like, hello, don't you get it? So sometimes, yes, like I told you at the beginning, empowerment is to be able to give people the benefit of the doubt and not to condemn them for what they don't know. Now, for how long and to what extent can you excuse them? There's when they say the angry part comes in, I step in and I try to educate people at all time, every time. And that's the difference between Dennis and many other people in the community. That at least I take my time and try to walk the person through the process of bias or misinformation or generalizations, and I do it consistently. I don't bulge, and I think that my strength comes from there, to be able to step in, and I have spoken for other people who have not been able to defend for themselves. When you don't read, when you don't have those tools, when you're not what I call intellectually literate, you don't have to read 100 books, but at least on the area, then you cannot defend yourself. There is too much of functional literacy out there, just functional. And
Yeah. Well, you know, another aspect about Grand Rapids or West Michigan as a whole, obviously it's a highly religious community. And some people would argue it's a highly conservative religious community. And some of those folks